So my title for today is around potential. What is potential? You know, the child is born and it's a seed of potential. But we don't realize that from the moment we are born, there are people around us making choices that we really don't know the effect of. Poverty has a way of stopping dreaming. It creates an avenue where we get stuck in our lives and we really stop dreaming, and that's rather dangerous. So most people have an impression of me that is very unlike where I come from. I actually come from a very challenged childhood, and that manifested both emotionally and financially. So much so when we were growing up, we didn't have a telephone at home simply because we couldn't afford it. So what did that do to me? Well, I lived in a dream world, and that allowed me to have love that was accessible anytime that I wanted it. And it also allowed me to live in a world that I could create. In other words, if you believe in the future, you can do really whatever you want to do. Poverty has a strange way of showing you some very special issues. But if you do not have the power to stand up against it, then society tends to force you into what it believes you should be. And this can be rather detrimental to your individuality and to who you should be in the first place. And as you know, we are seeing this all around the world. So those who did stand their ground, whether it be a Madiba or Martin Luther King or a very young Gandhi, these people did take a risk. They took a risk that they knew that some people wouldn't like them, that they wouldn't be agreed with all the time. And the price was often very dear, as we know in all three cases. But what would our world be if they hadn't taken the stand and recognized their potential and their uniqueness? We're seeing this very evidently in our classrooms around the world today. What is our school system? Where do we come from? What do they want us to be? Really, if you're the square and you don't fit into the round hole, then what happens to you? Our system isn't created to nurture you as the beautiful square. It really wants to put you into the round hole. What happens to those children who are squares? Do we have to force them into the round hole? And where do you as individuals sit within the system? Children are incredibly creative when we give them the chance, when we allow them to be. Their potential to discover things is quite remarkable. And even if you see that little "I love my two dads," even our families today have different connotations. It's not necessarily the norm as we knew it in history. You do have two dads having surrogate children, and single moms having surrogate children too. Many divorced families. What does that do to the round hole and the squares that are coming from them? So we look at our conveyor belt system, and I hate to tell you, but the conveyor belt is broken. And it's not about the textbook scandal with Limpopo, and it's not about our 25% unemployment rate. These are symptoms of a system that is not working, of a system that is creating individual children in its own image, that is not developing the potential of our child. It is, as Ken Robinson and a lot of theorists talk about, we are creating revenue-making individuals in order to feed our society. How does that fulfill us? And what are you doing as individuals in your lives? Are you squares or rounds? Or are you trying to fit into consensus reality? How do you live your lives? So what happens? We get onto the hamster wheel of life, and this is what we're taught by our parents, our teachers, our adults, by media. We go to school. You've got to do well. You've got to get into a top university. You've got to get a degree, which you have to earn as much as you possibly can. You have to marry Miss Right or Mrs. Right. And then you have to send your kids to school, obviously the best school. And then the whole cycle goes again. And no one really stops to see, is this making me happy? Do I really want this? So talking personally, I come from a very academic family. Superbly academic, I have to tell you. We're talking doctors, dentists, physios, professors, etc. Well, I was in the arts. My mother had me booked into a secretarial college before my matric results came out. Talk about confidence. Talk about being the square in the round hole. In fact, when I got my results, I was traveling, and my aunt called me to congratulate me. She was so thrilled that I had done so well. Well, who would have thought that I would have gone into the academic world? And a couple of years ago, I got a call from WITS to say that they would like to make me a lifetime honorary member of Golden Key. So there I was in the WITS Great Hall, following the professor in his gown all the way down, and I got the giggles. So uncontrollably that I couldn't breathe, because it was just so ludicrous that here was this square who was anything but academic. Golden Key, seriously? Wonderful time. So I've been really privileged to work with some phenomenal people in my life. Some you'll know, like Francois Pinault, Anthony Hopkins, Magic Johnson, and some you won't know. I've also worked with Holocaust survivors, running Survivors of the Shoah, which is Steven Spielberg's here for the last 18 years, and now with orphan and vulnerable children. And the last two groups have taught me so much about inspiration and what you can really create in your life if you're prepared to take the stand. But underneath, there's a little boy called Tumelo. So the other day, about probably 2 weeks ago, I got a little bit hatful sitting in the office. So I went to where my soul gets filled, and I went to play with the children. So Tumelo is in grade R in the Tomorrow Trust program, and he just, the minute I saw him, fell in love. I said, "What's your name?" He says, "Tumelo." I said, "How old are you?" He says, 5. So I went and painted with him, and then I was doing colors with him, and I realized that he didn't know his colors in English. So I called over his teacher from the township, and I said to her, "Okay, when he comes back here into the program in grade 1, I want you to have taught him all his colors in English." So our Tomorrow Trust teacher said, "Come, Kim, come look at this." So he pulls out white paper, and on the paper it has, you know, the black diagram of a boat or a car, and all the little shapes you have to make it, so the rounds and the squares and the triangles, puts it down in front of Tumelo. Within 3 minutes, Tumelo had done them perfectly. It would have taken me a week. Seriously. So I said to the teacher, I said to her, "Right, how's that for potential? How's that for uniqueness? Now it's your job to nurture that and to build that, because that's a mechanical brain. And who knows what he'll be if we do this now and we develop him into growing older." Yesterday I got onto the plane at a 9 o'clock flight to Cape Town, and I had tears flooding my eyes, and my family will tell you I am a crier, but it normally happens for very good reasons. And I want to share a story about Palisa with you. Palisa was one of our first students at Tomorrow Trust. She wanted to be a CA, this was her dream, but her grade 12 results didn't allow her to go to university. So we put her into a college to get a diploma. She's an AIDS orphan, and she did basic finance, basic accounts, and she got her diploma. She did amazingly well. And afterwards she came to me. I said, "Right, Palisa, you can go get a job now." She said, "No, Kim, I want to be a CA." So I said, "Well, the only way you're going to be able to do that is by going back and redoing your grade 12. She said, "Fine." She put her pride in her pocket. She went back, and as I'm talking, I can feel my throat closing in. And yesterday, she passed her honors of CA. Karabo, another one of our first students, again, economically, HIV/AIDS. She couldn't afford to go to school grade 10, 11, and 12, so she homeschooled herself. She's got an economics degree. She's been working at PwC for almost 3 years. She is on our board of trustees, and she's chair of our alumni group. Dreams, potential, uniqueness. So we said, let's look at South Africa. At the moment, between grade 3 and grade 6, last year government stats showed 70% illiteracy rate between grade 3 and grade 6. Now you ask this question. If a child is coming to school every single day, and as we know, children are hungry, they suck up knowledge like little sponges. What are you doing that a child is illiterate between the grades of 3 and 6? How do you achieve that? Our Tomorrow Trust program, the kids between grade 3 and grade 6, they only come to us every school holiday. We're sitting with 87% literacy rate. What do we do? It's not rocket science. What do? We look at the individual, we look at the potential, we look at the uniqueness, and then we nurture it up. So we look at a few square pegs that didn't fit into the round holes, whether it be Einstein, Steve Jobs, John Lennon. Do you know each single one of these people were told at school, you were a failure, you will never be successful, and we are so thankful that they knew their own potential. So when leaders care less about their people will care less about them. So we have the mines, where probably a 50-year-old miner who is doing a job that he hates, which he didn't want in the first place, is now angry and frustrated and is acting out. You see, if you do not tap into your potential and your uniqueness and your individuality, you will be frustrated. And do you stop, every one of you, whether you be a student or alumni or a lecturer or any single person here in the room, to stop and say, is my life fulfilled, and am I doing what I want to do, and am I reaching my potential? So without accessing your potential, are you free? Truly free? South Africa has such potential. What are we doing with it? If you look at South Africa compared to Italy, Italy is half the size. Our revenue is a fifth of Italy. But Italy around the world is known for its passion, its cooking, its clothing, its quality. South Africa? As we heard before, our riots. How do we run our country? The one story. That is about tapping into the uniqueness of a country and your people. So to close, I want to give you 4 take-homes. One is teach your child to dream and do it to yourself. Make sure you always have a dream right to the end of your days. Teach them to trust your gut. That is the one place that will always tell you the truth. Trust it. Teach them that they can do it no matter what. Boundaries are in our heads. We set our own limitations. They really aren't there. And 4th, teach them that potential only shines when the choice is made to unleash it. And that choice is each one of ours. It's up to us how we want to live our lives. It is up to you. No one else can tell you. Your internal reference is the most important thing to say, have I reached my potential or not? And I truly don't believe that until the day we die, we reach our potential. Thank you.